Okay, there's not much time left. There's a planet killer asteroid headed our way. But as far as tonight, I've only got about an hour and 20 minutes. So if you want to get your calls in, I'll go ahead and open up phones. So let's go and start with that. You know, speaking of Pope Elon, which is this opening track, he has been sharing images of himself as Iron Man. And he calls himself Irony Man. You know, kind of a dad joke type of thing, which he's known for. But it is notable that he is self-consciously aware of his, I guess you would say, his attributes. Musk is a Frankenstein, as is Trump. And by a Frankenstein, I mean he's an amalgamation of a number of characters that they put into one, including Tony Stark, Iron Man, but also inclusive of Gene Wilder, Willy Wonka. And then, of course, I guess you could throw in there Werner von Braun, a dose of Jack Parsons, and also a lot of Constantine, Emperor Constantine. And that's where we get Pope Elon from. So I just sent out notifications. So it'll be a few minutes, and we'll see the raft filling up. And then, of course, phones are open, 505-510-4226. King Ravana says, Downey Jr., the last party, vote for the hot wife. Not sure what you're talking about, but Robert Downey Jr. said, he claimed that he based his character that he portrayed, his Tony Stark, on Elon Musk, which is kind of interesting. So Elon Musk was the inspiration for Robert Downey Jr.'s version of Tony Stark. And Tony Stark, Iron Man, has a correlation with Game of Thrones' House of Stark, which is the Iron Throne. And iron is the metal associated with Mars in particular. And a lot of people have noted that Musk wears that suit of armor, the red suit of armor with the ram's head and the upside down cross. And that's straight out of the Tarot. That's the Emperor, another Pope reference. The Emperor is in red. It's the fourth card, fourth planet, Mars associations. Specifically the ram's head, which is Aries. Aries is associated with Mars, the color red, the metal iron. All these associations are built into the scripting. I say we live in a Disney universe, and I mean that quite literally. Planet Netflix, and right now mostly Gotham. I think we live in Gotham. That's our city. If you want to look at the dominant overlapping fictional universes, what they're using to paint up the zeitgeist. And that's what they're doing. They're painting the zeitgeist. They're defining our age. They're giving us the establishment world view. And it works. They have synchronized all mankind. This is the Tower of Babel. Oh, yes. Oh, so we were talking about this Kennedy thing. Somebody mentioned Kennedy. And I think we were one of the first ones to talk about it, but I see the story spreading now because it just came out a few days ago that 2 months before the JFK assassination, he and his wife they pre-enacted it while on a vacation where JFK was playing dead on the ground covered in Heinz 57. And Jackie calls the Secret Service in and records the scene. Now, we don't have all the footage. We just have some stills. But it's coming out. But it's bizarre. And the usual stuff comes out. Oh, maybe he had a prophecy. Maybe he was having visions. And predictive programming has been a thing since the advent of television. And the JFK assassination had plenty of it in movies, like Suddenly, Frank Sinatra, Manchurian Candidate. But there was also another, I guess you would consider an example of predictive programming for the Kennedy thing with this homemade movie. And then also the day of, the commenters who were the news commentators who were there at the parade in Dallas. For some strange reason, we're talking about various times in history where Secret Service lapsed and left presidents vulnerable to attackers. And of course, that was the day of. Okay, let's see here. King Ravana, Quays, Marcus, Lean Dion, Ted Striker 2112, Tom Smith, thank you for joining. Lots to talk about. Let's go ahead and go through my points of interest, and then we'll scroll and see what's on my minds. Points of interest. Okay, Rocket Man. Now, this I had to post this on JL's website. JL and I obviously don't see eye to eye on a lot of things when it comes to the worldview and religion and this stuff. But as far as what we discern in the pattern, we tend to pick up on a lot of the same clues. So I had to point this out to him because he was the first person I thought of. Elton John goes blind in his right eye. Now, why is this significant? Well, he had a severe infection. He's blind in his right eye. This is significant specifically because after the Trump head wound thing of 7/13, Trump and Elon Musk, 84 days later, show up as Trump and Rocket Man, Elon Musk, show up in Butler, Pennsylvania. And we were just talking about the Braveheart, the Braveheart cover of New York Times, no, New York Post. They called him Braveheart. And then when he's raising his fist up, it looks just like the Braveheart movie poster. And his avatar from Truth Social is Mel Gibson from the Braveheart. That's basically the face paint. So we were already talking about this event where he goes back to Butler 85 days later with Elon Musk. Now, the significance is before Elon Musk was announced to be showing up with Trump in Butler, Jurassic Liars had mentioned, because Elton John was in the news for some reason, he said, from Elton John's birthday to 10/5, it's this many days. And he listed a number of connections where he predicted there'd be some kind of a Rocket Man appearance at that event or something on that day signifying Rocket Man. So Elon Musk shows up, and I think that's strange, but accurate. Well, here we are now, just a few months later, and Rocket Man, who was brought up in the conversation, is now blind in his right eye. Now, this kind of comports with something else that Synchro Morpheus had put together, where and this is an example of predictive programming, of knowing that we're looking at a model and working our way backward. So Synchro Morpheus was commenting on the story where Jay Leno fell down the hill and the right side of his face was busted up. Well, this is kind of interesting. Before Jay Leno had the injuries from hitting his head on a rock after falling down the hill, before he put on the eye patch, he had made the news because he had an injury to his ear, which he had to have replaced. So what Synchro Morpheus had mentioned here is that, so first Jay Leno injures his ear, and now he injures his eye.
It's all funny.
And this is something that ties into what we've been saying, that the ear wound that we saw in 7/13 is a predecessor to the big one, the one that results in the eye wound. And we have so many ridiculous examples of predictive programming hinting at this, not even hinting, explicitly stating this is coming. I mean, spoiler alerts are what we do here. Spoiler alerts for the world stage. But let me play this clip, because he has to be an insider. Musk is making a joke about it's all fun and games until somebody loses an eye and an ear.
Well, it's all fun and games until someone loses an eye or an ear, or so I guess so then it's just all fun and games with one eye and one ear. Fine, whatever, But
all fun and games with one eye, one ear. Very strange. XX Angel Wing says that's very strange. Actually, pushed down the hill. If anything, it could be makeup. Looks like something out of The Walking Dead, and I don't think it's random. Simply because of its prominence, how these characters, these actors on the world stage are used to carry forth propaganda messaging, as we often describe. I should say as we observe, because we are not mystifying the news, and that has been one of the main issues plaguing Trutherville for the longest time, is their tendency to treat the media projections, the simulation, as objectively real. But they find holes in the story, so they add on to it. And I'm saying this is the opposite of what we should be doing. If the story doesn't add up, you don't add on to it, but rather you have to reject it. You have to become informed about it, but be an informed non-believer. But in my criticism of alt media, I do get challenged by a lot of people on this premise that predictive programming exists, A, and that B, it's put there by man. Specifically the same group of individuals who do the fake news, who do the psychological operations, that it's not separate. The mistake I think that many make is they think that there is some kind of a separation between the news media and what we get through entertainment at large. I'm talking movies, books, novels, cartoons, all of it. There is no difference. But in order to bridge that gap, and this is why they call it the God of the Gap fallacy, the divine fallacy, many will say, I can't quite understand how this works, or I'm incredulous, so I'm going to insert something supernatural, some advanced technology, or a God, or a devil, a demiurge. And this has been the explanation for the longest time, that predictive programming is put there by gods, angels, higher powers. And I've been really challenging this, because this is the default. The default explanation for what is really just propaganda is this theory that higher powers are putting these political messages into major movies. And what I'm pointing out is that man stages psyops, which are preceded by programming. No need to assert higher powers. The Metascript, as we call it here, explains what we're looking at without inserting a hypothetical supernatural effect or entity. We have an explanation that doesn't need that. And moreover, evidence for higher powers have to be established before we can treat it as an equal possibility to man psyoping man. You know, kind of like the idea that some would posit that aliens built the pyramids. Well, before you can weigh that against conventional explanations, you have to prove aliens exist, A, and that B, that man could not have done it. And when it comes to the alignment between entertainment and future news, no one has provided evidence for aliens or gods, etc., and no one has provided any example that man could not have done. And what we have been doing is pointing fingers at the writers themselves. We're looking at the metascriptors. And then one of the other trends that I see, and I think it's a limited hangout, is this tendency to focus on Stanley Kubrick as though he's the be-all, end-all of predictive programming. And they tend to overemphasize him, and they don't note how many other directors contributed to 9/11, contributed to the predictive programming. I mean, even if you look at the moon landing, Apollo 11 hinted at in The Shining, that was after the fact. But before that, you had generations of sci-fi preparing people for the eventuality. X Angel Wing says, I guess that to notice a lot is fake, made up stuff, actors, CGI. Yeah, AI. I mean, everybody's foolable. I have a chapter in the Auto Hoax 101 about being dupable. If you can't admit that you're dupable, you've been duped. You have a blind spot. And I admit it. I got fooled by a whale-sized clownfish. There's no such thing. But I didn't know because I saw it on a Twitter stream. It's like, look at that TikTok video. They're pulling a gigantic clownfish out of the ocean. And then I went through the comments, and somebody had said, oh, look, it's fake. His arm's going into the side of it. And I had to watch it a few times. So the simulation's getting increasingly better. Except for the ISS, which is stunted. For some reason, they're stuck in 2015, special effects-wise. And this is one of the things that you'll never hear from the people who spend all day pro or anti-flat Earth, is they will focus all their efforts on contradicting establishment science or promoting establishment science, but they never address media fakery. They never address special effects. They never do. And why? That would be my question. Okay, so let's talk about the next part of it too. There's quite a lot here. So I put up this blog post basically saying I am not an alt media mystic. God does not stage psyops. And I'm happy to debate this point. If anybody wants to try to make the case for the supernatural and weigh it against the Metascript, we should have that debate because it'll elucidate the finer points, the nuance of what we're actually talking about here. We have receipts. And one of the points I was making about Synchromorpheus looking at this Jay Leno thing is that he predicted this. He said, if we're looking at a scripted situation, and if Leno is just communicating part of this body of symbolism or this message, then then the eye wound must mean something deeper. And he looked into it, and he kind of came up with this. And he said, look, ear, eye. And again, this is typical. We saw Robert De Niro going crazy outside the Trump courthouse. Then we looked into a few of his movies, and it's like, whoa, he foreshadows Trump getting shot in Machete, almost word for word. Even Machete's ear blowing up. I mean, we're predicting predictive programming. We have a model that presumes we're looking at a script, that there's an overarching big picture here. And we have been consistently describing this zeitgeist view of the world stage. And then based on this as a model, we have been consistently predicting where predictive programming is going to be. And it's generally consistent. You know what's interesting is there's a ton of stuff related to Seattle, 11.3, and EMP, electromagnetic pulse, like high altitude nuke, or Seattle just getting nuked. But Seattle, EMP, 11.3, which I would connect to a couple of things. The One World Trade Tower opened on 11.3, Seattle, of course, 3.11. But my point here is that we see these things consistently grouped together. And I have noted something. I kind of don't want to offer any spoilers, but I watch every movie that comes out that I can that reaches a critical mass that I know will contain messaging, predictive programming messaging. So I went and I checked out the Wizard of Oz movie, and at the very end, and you can read about this on Wiki, so if you don't want to hear a spoiler, cover your ears. But as we've examined in this bigger story, Seattle is the Emerald City. And at the end, the Emerald City gets EMP'd by the Wicked Witch. And so you have the EMP Seattle connection, you know, the blackout, I guess, which I'd correlate with an EMP. It wasn't really a nuke, but it looked like it. You know, the clouds, the storm clouds, it was green. And then, of course, you had the power going out. And then beyond that, the movie was initially released in somewhere on 11.3. And then it had its release here on 11.22. So we have a couple of connections here. 11.22 head wound connection. 11.3 nuke Seattle connections. A collection of concurrent programming examples relating to, what was this one? Oh yeah, that's right. The show Utopia. And Utopia is a movie about a pandemic, but more interestingly, it's about a group of individuals who are into comics, and they notice that the comic books they're reading are predicting future epidemics, death tolls to the number, with precision. So you have a group of individuals who have figured out predictive programming. They're the main characters, at least at the beginning. They go to some kind of, they go to this comic book convention, and they are shown a future comic book in the series, which would tell them what's about to happen. So in other words, they got an advanced copy of the script. And because of this, they were hunted down by Arby and killed. I mean, really kind of disturbing and violent movie. And at the end, the anti-Bill Gates crowd takes bulldozers to the warehouse and gets rid of all the needles. All right, interesting question, Shed Dog. I don't know what that has to do with media deconstruction. I see a lot of incels talking about it. They hype it up. Here we go. Sir Elton John, 77, can't see anything after losing sight in his right eye. Rocket Man, now blind in one eye. What does that mean? We'll leave it up to JL. This is from the MSN. Earth has tilted 31.5 inches because of human activity. Earth is tilted, and it's because of us. We have a bigger impact than we thought. So this is how you know the Earth couldn't be flat, because that would mean the oceans would pour off the side, right? That's kind of a tilt. Well, I guess, I'm surprised it's not a full 33, but they're saying it's because of the way that we move water around, the way we pump groundwater, that it's causing the ball to tilt. So it says, as a result, the sea levels have risen 0.24 inches, and the Earth is tilted 31.5 inches. Who was that congressman who said that Guam was going to tip over because they had too many Marines, that it was going to capsize? Oh, Hank Johnson. This was pretty good. Hank Johnson was complaining about military bases in Guam, and he said he was worried that the weight of all these soldiers and their equipment would cause Guam to tip over.
An island that at its widest level is, 12 miles from shore to shore?
It's a little model, 12 miles from shore to shore. 7 miles between one shore and the other. It's a small island. And he goes on to say, so 24 miles long, 7 miles wide, the least wide place on the island. And at the end here he says, my fear is that the whole island will become overpopulated.
The whole island will become so overly populated that it will tip over and capsize.
That it will tip over and capsize. Like, that could happen to the Earth if they keep this groundwater pumping. Our activity, maybe that's another thing. We could initiate a premature polar shift or something. I think I've heard stuff like this said by a lot of doomers. All right, I'm continuing to go through my notes. It's been a couple of days. I want to see what we've missed. Mike Tyson talking about how the elite like to hunt down people and kill them in the woods. Did we play this one? We're back a few days. Okay, yes. Jurassic Liars, why don't you call in and let us know what you think about Rocket Man's eye wound?
Human did to another human being. It happened. It's
Yes.
anything, I don't know, fucked them, ate them, whatever it is, it happened.
Somewhere in history it definitely happened.
Yes.
It probably happened somewhere this year.
Yes. And sometimes in these special camps and stuff, it happens. These people own these thousands of acres and and nothing grows on them.
So he's talking about a scenario kind of like in that movie Blink Twice. Elite hunting people. Yeah, world stage. Utopia has actors as well. Utopia has like Crisis Actor Island, where the people who perform in these media stunts are actually separate from everyone else. And yeah, it goes deep. In fact, I also want to bring this up today. I was doing some research into the subject of mind war and how it originates from an offshoot of the Church of Satan. And it was Colonel Michael Aquinas who said something very interesting. You seize control of all the means by which the government and populace process information, and you adjust those so minds are made up as you desire. For the mind to believe in its own decisions without coercion. Coercion measures used by the operative must not be detectable by ordinary means. No need to resort to mind-weakening drugs, such as those explored by the CIA. In fact, exposure that would do damage to the mind war's reputation. So what he's talking about is influencing people to get them to pre-agree to what they're going to see in the propaganda. That's predictive programming's purpose. It's to get you to agree with and make your mind up about something, to have already drilled about it in your head before you actually experience it. And that's from Mind Wars. Yeah, we went into some interesting rabbit trails. Yeah, refer to Elton John, right eye going blind. My prediction was right, Rocket Man event. So that's what JL is going to be calling in about. Phones are open, 505-510-4226. After Russian ship docks on space station, astronauts report a foul smell. So there's a correlation between what's going on in the space station and the movie ISS, which came out last year on January 19th. In that movie, Russia, Putin starts nuking America, and the Americans get the message and the Russians get the message, take over the ISS. Well, right now, there's a closed hatch between the cosmonauts and the astronauts because there's a leak on the cosmonaut side that could easily endanger everybody else. So they're already physically segregated now. It's all symbolic. It's all theater. Remember, NASA didn't fake the moon landing to trick the Russians and win a PR war for capitalism versus communism. NASA faked the space station, and Russia was complicit because the governments of the world needed a PR victory over the masses. They needed to convince mankind of their model as they present it, irrespective of shape. It could be a big spinning ball, but whatever they have shown us so far is obviously artwork, filtered. And this is true in every sense. The media is not a window to the world. It's always a filter. It's a liar. And if you mistake it for a window, you fall into a box like Truman. Or like the guy Free Guy before he wakes up from being an NPC. Awesome. Joined by Salty Siren, Capono 5150, Gematria 101, and Immortal L. Odin is said to have traded his eye for wisdom. Yeah, he hung in the world tree for 9 days and received the runes. And that's a fascinating area of study, runes, because people talk a lot about gematria, numerology, and the tarot are based on like the Hebrew characters, which are also synonymous with numbers. There's a lot of that, but runes are an analogous system. And we talk about sigils, sigil magic, and you see its use. And so there are some theories behind it, which might offer some explanation as far as the obsession the power elite have with apparently word magic and casting spells. Angel Link says, I got hit with an energy weapon during a live show on YouTube. That channel was targeted. So you're listening to some channel, it's targeted, and you get zapped. We get gremlins on occasion. If we talk about something, once I was talking about the Pentagon having some deal with YouTube, and all of a sudden buffering. And I thought that was a little conspicuous. Okay, I'm going to continue through my notes. Basically, cosmonauts have donned protective equipment. It says it should have been a routine mission to ferry 3 tons of food and supplies to the ISS, but when the cosmonauts opened a hatch, they got a toxic smell. Unexpected, they observed droplets. This is a statement issued on Sunday. According to the air scrubbers and containment sensors, they monitored the station's atmosphere following the observations about the aberrant smell, and they determined that something's up, something's toxic with the air quality. This is going to be interesting, because I think this is a major part of the plot. We were talking about the significance of the 2 stranded astronauts and the Calypso. And the Calypso being a reference to the Odyssey, where he's stranded, and they're stranded. They're stranded for the rest of the year. But after Odysseus escapes, he has to confront Poseidon. Well, the curse of Poseidon, because of his interaction with the Cyclops. And right now we're looking at the Space Odyssey. So I'm thinking maybe Poseidon, which has been talked about lately, is the next thing. And that's Russia. That's Russia nuking some coastal city, likely Seattle. And this also comports with the Kraken stuff. The Kraken, Seattle, 11.3. We talk about this a bit. The body of symbols that have reflected this notion. And the Kraken also has some connotations for a fault line. Okay, so it goes on here to say the Russians immediately closed the hatch leading to the Progress spacecraft. And again, we're talking about the toxic smell in the ISS. Continuing. There's so much going on here today. Breaking, learn why Elon Musk's plan to colonize the moon and Mars is critical to the future of humanity's survival and consciousness, is Alex Jones. Total space believer. Now, this is a weird photo. This is LBJ being sworn in 2 hours after JFK's assassination. And at this swearing in ceremony, Jackie Kennedy is there in her blood-drenched clothes. I suspect it's Heinz 57, but it's black and white. It's hard to tell. But how morbid or how fake? Oh, you know what it is? Let me go ahead and fix my phone settings. I think I had it forwarding to my main phone. So just one moment. Let me fix that. Thank you for letting me know. It is fixed. You can now call in. Phones are now officially open. Lucid Streams, can't stay Tim, left a voice message in your Discord DMs. Okay, awesome. Awesome. I'll play it. Unless it's something you don't want me to play. But you can leave me voicemails anywhere, and I will play them during live streams so we can all comment. So phones are officially open. Okay, let me get verification that I can play this one. Okay, a couple of other points. Stu Peters' weird pre-rapper past. So we've already talked about Stu Peters being the rapper Focus, where he was appropriating black culture before he wanted to hang them. He had the extreme event where he was walking around with a noose talking about vigilantism. Well, it turns out before he was a rapper, he was pretending to be an actor. And as this imposter, going by some other name, he pretended to be the brother of somebody famous, and he managed to live at Jesse Ventura's mansion for a couple of months, for an entire summer. Stu Peters, 22, called himself Coleman Hughes and claimed to be the brother of a TV movie actor, Jonathan Taylor Thomas. And as such, he lived in the governor's residence for an entire summer. And I found another article where he was evicted, and he was referred to as an imposter. This is before he became a bounty hunter, and then after a bounty hunter, a rapper, and then a right-wing Twitter shitposter. Interesting career arc. Okay, let's play the voicemail, and phones are open if you want to call in, JL.
Hey Tim, Anissa here, aka Lucid Dreams. I've been meaning to reach out for a while, and I'm doing it now following the conversation that's been had.
Okay, it's like a 3-minute one, so what I'll do is I will peruse it in a bit. It doesn't give me the transcripts. Shed Dog, the number is 505, not 1-900. Yeah, what a resume, right? And okay, so Stu Peters is also known for things like Suddenly Dead. And he was taking a lot of pre-2020 footage and throwing it into his documentary. And then he screwed everybody else out of the royalties. So there's that. And then he said some very not nice things to Lauren Witzke. And it's hard to feel sorry for her because she's pretty vitriolic as well. Joined by Michelle Kastner, Fuzzy Frankenbeans. Thank you for joining. Patricia Steer. N.A. Literalist said the Russians do and did get fooled at the moon landings. Yeah, the Russians did get fooled, the population, but the government did not. American people, I mean, look, the Americans, the Russians, whatever country you're, everybody was deceived. This was a global deception. So the idea that they faked it to trick the Russians, or they did it to beat the Russians, the space race is a farce. The space farce. It was never real. It was a propaganda victory against mankind as they installed a new religious paradigm with the new heaven. Space is the heaven. The religion is Nasatology. World Stage, was he the snake venom guy? No. Oh, yeah, he was. Yes, he was. He was the one who said that there's snake venom in the water supply. I mean, he says anything and everything. They pay good money to be a propagandist. I heard if you're a Russian asset, you can get $100K per week. The company's called Tenet. And I would do it. I think you would all understand. If like once a week, I just dedicate myself to Russian propaganda, you would all know I'm doing it for the IPS. And that money's going to a good cause. So you will forgive me, I'm sure, if I start talking about Russia taking Putin's talking points. Okay, I'm pretty sure the phones are fixed now, so if you want to give it a shot. In the meantime, T-Dog made this. Thank you for this. This is AI Gen. It's not real. I have to remind myself. It's a giant clownfish with penguins on it. Uber Nemo. And this is a reference to me being fooled by a giant clownfish that I saw on TikTok. And I'm just pointing it out that I'm not some paragon of visual literacy. I can be fooled as easily as anybody else, but the difference is I'm aware of how foolable I am. Now this is interesting. Leo Pirates posted this. Upon rewatching, I discovered a JFK joke. Guess I better cancel that open car parade. So Elon Musk made this joke. I hope I don't get shot. I was just on a German magazine saying I was enemy number 2. Enemy number 2, I'm definitely upgrading my security. Maybe I should put an inflatable dummy of me in a motorcade and just troll them. Now this is funny because the most recent research on the JFK assassination has it that Jim Henson or some sort of Muppet that on 11/22/1963 they shot a Muppet. And I think that might be the case. And when Jackie is putting her hand up to him, and then she crawls in the back of the car and reaches for something. You know, some said, she was checking if he was okay. Some others said that she put a gun beneath his head and she shot him. No, I think that she pulled the ripcord on his squib and caused the head to pop off, and then she grabbed the squib can. I think it was all pre-produced. I mean, no one saw it live. Again, the Zapruder film took 12 years. That's 12 years to get their story straight. And look how not straight it really is. You know, how contentious it is. Lee and Dion posted this magazine cover, the European on the brink. What do you notice? Trump's right eye. The previous one had Trump with the MAGA hat as a werewolf, and it said, Unleash the Beast. Infinite Plane Radio.
All right, finally it worked.
Yeah, thanks for letting me know. I appreciate your patience. So when I saw that Rocket Man thing, I was like, okay, JL said something about Elton John before Rocket Man Elon Musk pops up at the Trump rally.
Yeah, well, the whole Rocket Man thing obviously begins with stupid Donald Trump calling Kim Ding Dong, the North Korean dictator, Rocket Man. That's where it all stems from.
Right. And
Rocket Man.
So now Rocket Man Elton John goes blind in his right eye. What do you make of this?
Well, let me just real quick go to why Elvis is Rocket Man. Because see, Trump is calling Kim Ding Dong, the North Korean dictator, Rocket Man, and that's because Kim Ding Dong is born on January 8th, which is Elvis's birthday. So when he's saying Rocket Man, he's saying Elvis is the Rocket Man. Okay?
Right. January 8th, his birthday. We got that one. And then, okay, so that, there's a few individuals that draw attention to this meme, this Rocket Man meme. And so now we have Elton John, Rocket Man himself. His latest documentary, his biopic is called Rocket Man. And he's on the world stage in this picture all of a sudden, and he's showing this eye wound thing right after Jay Leno.
Right, Jay Leno. And Leno is Elon also. And you said Elon was talking about that, right?
Oh, that's right. And Elon is the Rocket Man.
Leno.
Yeah, Leno, Elon. I thought about that, actually. But but what do you think about that? Leno have his ear wounded, and now his eye. And then
well, that goes right back to the Antichrist, who's going to get his eye wound. You know, his right eye does get messed up, one of his eyes. So when he gets his deadly head wound, which he heals from. So we'll see what that's about, you know, when it comes to that. But see, the whole Rocket Man thing is about Elvis, because Elvis is the Rocket Man, you know. And that's why North Korea, go ahead.
Well, I was going to point out that a recent movie by Francis Ford Coppola, and he has all kinds of stuff having to do with assassination, the Orange Connection that we've talked about. But in his Megalopolis, the main character, Caesar, excuse me, he looks like Neo, Caesar, he specifically not only gets an eye wound, but he heals it through some kind of a medical miracle that he designed. So there's this miraculous healing, and it's 3 days. I mean, it gets pretty deep, because you've got a couple of movies where you have a Trump character whose death is signed off on or plotted by an Obama character, but he specifically has the eye wound and it being recovered.
And also, it's not a coincidence that, you know, this Russia thing right now is happening, because North Korea has soldiers working with Russia, and Russia's giving North Korea weapons, right? Missile, some kind of missile. Isn't that what they're doing?
Yeah, I heard something in that. And someone's asking, are you saying the JFK assassination wasn't real? I'm saying the JFK assassination was a psyop. It was staged. He wasn't assassinated. No, he wasn't really killed. It was as fake as the moon landing. And there's plenty to support this, absolutely. But you know, in the case of any major world stage event with predictive programming, my first rule of thumb is fake until proven real. And so far, the idea that they shot a puppet makes most sense, and the Zapruder film wasn't seen for 12 years. I also think nukes are fake. And so this drama we're seeing right now with the Rocket Man doesn't concern me one bit. What about you? Do you believe in nukes in the sense that they say?
No, I don't believe that they have actual nukes, but I do believe that they're going to plant bombs underneath the, you know, around the city. Because you know that Seattle has all these underground city or something tunnels and all that stuff. That's why they had that boring tunnel thing going. You know that boring thing?
Yes, yes, the underground tunneling, and uh, I think there's suggestions of a fault line. I mean, I'm with you that nukes are fake as described, but they could simulate and do some destruction in a very controlled way. We could be looking at a controlled demolition, but the media can tell a different story.
Well, that's what the Beirut explosion was. It was a test run to see how much explosives they need to make it look like a, because there was a nuke like explosion in the air.
True. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, on 8/4, right, August 4th, that thing, and the Beirut thing, and of course I was born in Beirut, Lebanon, but look, the whole man, and like I said, that was a test run for how much explosive they're going to use, probably, how much they're going to need in, Seattle, Washington. Or by the way, when I say Seattle, I'm saying that they're probably going to use Seattle as their ground zero, but I believe that they're going to crack a part of Elvis's, where the part is Elvis's head. I believe that that's probably going to be cracked off.
That's the Kraken. I think there's a significance to it. And one other thing here. So I watched that latest movie, Wizard of Oz movie, and Oz, as you know, we talk about how Oz is Seattle. Seattle's the Emerald City. And at the end of the movie, and again, spoiler alert, so I don't want to ruin it for you, but the Wicked Witch EMPs Oz, lights out. I mean, and the movie was first released on 11/3, another huge tie-in to this general narrative of Seattle getting an EMP. But again, Emerald City getting a blackout at the very end, and then it's the end of the movie, then it goes part 2. So it's like, okay, the movie ends on that note.
Yeah, that's a good catch too, because I haven't seen it, but that's a good catch. Yeah, because there is probably going to be like a blackout, after that. But I don't know if it's going to be nationwide, but for sure, whatever areas around there get affected. But it's possible.
Well, right next to the Seattle Space Needle, you have the EMP. They changed the name, but it used to be called the Experience Music Project. So EMP has been a part of that body of symbols, the architecture. It's been there for a long time. So the electromagnetic pulse has been predicted in Leave the World Behind and many other movies, how it ends. So the idea of Seattle getting a blackout is almost intrinsic to the Metascript, the big change, the big story. It's going to be about this blackout. And that was hinted at in Megalopolis as well.
And also like we talked about the 47 Super Bowl, right? And Elvis has been dead for 47 years. Trump just turned 47. So the big connection, right? The Blackout Bowl was the 47. Right?
Yeah, that's right. The Blackout Bowl is Super Bowl number 47. RR says, dude, JFK was murdered in broad daylight. Your argument is based on trusting what you're told by the government-controlled media that fakes everything else. And so that's the best you have is trusting the screen. But if you really went for the evidence, you would be, I think, left with a myriad of scapegoats. But all indications are it was fake and scripted. In fact, you know who shot JFK? It wasn't Oswald. It was Stanley Kubrick. It's a Kubrick production.
Yeah.
But
I don't believe he was shot either. But go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I appreciate you calling in and chiming in on this Rocket Man thing, because before 10-5, you did, in fact, mention this Rocket Man connection with the butler, and Elon showed up kind of filling in for that. And this is just more indication that we're seeing this unfolding story. And it doesn't get clearer than that, where literally he's pointing at his eye on the cover of the Drudge Report.
Yeah, that's all I was calling in about, was the Rocket Man connection with Elon. I know you said JL, because I was like, JL, that's Jay Leno too. And Jay Leno also burned his whole face. You remember that?
Yeah, so his ear wound preceded the eye wound. That's what we were talking about.
Yeah, but was the ear wound with the burn?
I believe
was
so.
That the burn?
Because he had to have his whole ear replaced.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't know that. Until you said it.
Yeah, one of our guys found, Synchromorpheus found this. So he's like, okay, so the ear wound, very public, and now the eye thing. And so there seems to be a sequence that they're preparing us for. And I found many more examples. Like there's this Caped Crusader Batman cartoon on Amazon, season finale. Batman throws a boomerang at Rupert Thorne, a Trump character, and slashes his right ear. And then the season ends. So it's like
Wow.
kind of a cliffhanger. It's like he says, "I'll see you next season," basically, which is the next term.
All right, yeah, but just don't forget to tell everybody that 611, right? Because that was the whole 611 connection. Why he went to Butler, and he did a moment of silence at 611, which is my prediction. Right?
6:11 and 33 seconds is when he was shot, and then of course moment of silence at 6:11, and they had some man sing Ave Maria, which is what the Riddler was singing in the Batman movie, and the shooter, Thomas Crook, is a twin of the Riddler. Like, it's just too perfect of a connection to be coincidence.
Yeah, and Thomas means twins.
Yeah, there you go, twin of the Riddler. And the news is like, even after the shooting, Thomas Crooks is an enigma. And then someone's like, oh, the Riddler's name is Edward Nigma, or Enigma.
Wow, yeah. Yeah, and by the way, Rocket Man, stupid Elton John, speaking of, because it was 84 days after Trump got his head wound, where he went back to Butler, right? And when Trump went back to Butler, Pennsylvania, and so you had the 611 and the 84 connection, and Rocket Man, Elton John, he was born on 325, and 325 is the 84th day of the year on a regular year. So it has the 84 connection, okay, the stupid Elton John, Rocket Man, and 325 is connected to June 11th too, because June 11th is the 162nd, 163rd day of the year, which makes 325. And he's born on 325.
That's what I was trying to get. I knew there was something with his birth date, 325, and the 84. And again, Trump goes to Butler 84 days after. 84 is a huge it's a huge signifier in this story. And I mentioned the Batman Caped Crusader, where at the end of the season he gets his ear slashed. And they said Amazon picks up season 2 on August 4th. So you see these numbers reiterated again and again. And I have one other connection, the 4-8. Season 4, episode 8 of Stranger Things, Matthew Modine gets shot. Matthew Modine plays Joker in Full Metal Jacket, who has the target on his head. And in the subtext, Joker is JFK as a war photographer. So you got this JFK connection to Joker. There's that Joker name. And then the actor rather, gets shot in a 4-8. I mean, this is just super consistent.
Yeah, it's off the charts, man. It's off the charts, the connections, man. Anyway, brother, all right, man, take care and say hello to everybody out there.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you being on call, and I put a link to your channel on my minds. All right, have a good day, evening.
Appreciate it. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I knew he would have picked that up. RR says, so where did JFK go? Good question. Crisis Actor Island, like in Utopia? But because you don't know, doesn't mean that he didn't change roles or that he's not in hiding or that it wasn't faked. I mean, have you checked the grave? Have you personally examined it? But my contention here, what I'm pointing out, is that our news media's job isn't to faithfully report media or news to you. It's not to inform you. It's to conform you. And what are they conforming you to? They're conforming you to a prefabricated story. They wrote our history. It's already been written. Everything indicates this in broad strokes. The minor things, yeah, maybe little changes here and there, but it's all about their selective focus and the big paradigm-shattering, paradigm-shifting, transformative psychological operations, like 9/11 stuff, JFK, that's a big one, the moon landing. These things that put humanity collectively into the same stage, the same internal map of the world. So we're in agreement. Everyone agrees, atheists and believers in various heavens and religions, everyone agrees in outer space. So that's the unifying concept. It's what they have done is they have used media to replace the role of church and Bibles or holy books as a way of providing the acceptable world view as per the elite. It's really just history making, like quite literally, which means like in Megalopolis, you have the design authority, this group of people, shadowy group like the Strangers in Dark City. It means that in order to perform or to have their history made, they have to actually perform it. So anytime you look at mass casualty drills, like there's one in Belgium recently that had more than almost 1,000 actors more than 700 or 800 actors. Mass casualty simulation. Just to give you an idea of the scale, we're talking about mass casualty simulations where you have hundreds of people involving many hospitals, and it's just to test their system out, like a big stress test. So the techniques of simulating an event, a mass casualty event, these things are well understood. There's often drills concurrent with events. In fact, I have one here earmarked. This is from Statesman's Journal. Salem Health runs mass casualty shooting drill hours after California shooting. So what I'm pointing out is that the simulation can be presented to the news, who are complicit, as real. They take these drills and they make them seem real to the public for purposes of propaganda. There's this show called Are We There Yet with Ice-T, where he breaks down this concept of the public being duped, but for the greater good. And what I'm saying is that this is not an anomaly. This is actually how they make history. So in our historic timeline, fake as it may be, we had 20 years of mass shootings with bull cuts and AR-15s. We've had these various scenarios that have just been developing as they pile on the propaganda, but they're essentially superstitions, hyperstitions, or myths. Whatever happened to radical Islamic terrorists blowing themselves up, they kind of phased that out. It's no longer PC. Now they have a different thing, for a different current enemy or current scapegoat. But I'm saying that this is not new, and that every major event that has the potential to reshape our world is staged. That's why the atom bomb being faked is so significant. It put us in a world where now we could all be instantly destroyed. Since the advent of the atom bomb, we have all been in the end times. Infinite Plane Radio.
Dude, sorry about that, but one of your viewers put something down that you should tell, because I talked about this before, but I forgot to mention it. When I saw it, I had to say it. Because, Elon, I told you, was Leno, right? Same letters?
Yes.
And and Elon was talking about it, right? With the eye and the ear crap, right?
Right.
Right. So Leno is Elon, and Elton is Elon with the T, with a cross, because, the crucifixion thing, which I've talked about. I mentioned it actually in one of my videos.
Actually, that's good. And I wrote that in my chat. I put Elton, all caps with a lowercase t, because the T is the cross, the SpaceX cross, the cross of X, which is Elon Musk's thing. It's a hugely important symbol. So you also have the Elon encoded in the name. And in Mars, A Technical Tale by Werner von Braun, the first dictators of Mars are called the Elons. So you got like Elton, Elon. The EL is one of the codes here, or Elvis, as you often talk about.
Right.
Okay, good.
Anyway,
good point. Thanks for bringing that up, Elton. Elton with a T in it.
Good catch by your viewer. I forgot about that. Yeah.
All right, another puzzle piece. All right, have a good evening. Another piece to the puzzle. Somebody said, dude, the media was not as manipulative in the 60s as it was today. The predictive programming would suggest that the infrastructure of mass media has always been used to provide preparatory conditioning, preparatory programming, to set expectations, to implant post-hypnotic suggestions, to drill us for future fake news. So when I say fake news, I'm not talking about CNN or Fox. I'm talking about a worldview that all sides agree upon at the highest levels, that we're talking about a fabricated worldview, that it mostly comports with reality, but they have a lot of things they insert that aren't quite true. And that this faking of news is tantamount to faking history. Because what happens if you fake news 7 days a week, 365 days a year, 10 years later? Well, you have written history. Because everything that gets put into the fake news, no matter how many of us call it such, it goes into the history books. The official version of fill-in-the-blank PSYOP is now history. Orwell said, those who control the present, control the future, control the past. And I would add on to this that the conqueror writes the history. So we are looking at history in the making every single day. They control time. And that was the theme in Megalopolis, where the design authority were able to stop time. And it's all symbolic. They insert a fake historic event at a precise time, 8:46 a.m., 9/11/2001. That inserting a movie onto the world stage that everyone processes as real, that is how they fake history. They fake history news story by news story, page by page, and this has always been the case. Predictive programming proves it. The earliest example of predictive programming for Trump is like 1958, but you can also look at what foreshadowed JFK. And we say predictive, but we're talking about foreshadowing, but it's not only predictive in the past. And the more stuff in the past, the more you can cherry pick from, the more you could arrive at a fallacious conclusion. But I'm also pointing out the very obvious examples of concurrent real-time alignments between entertainment and what's on the news. This has always been the case. So if your argument is from, I saw it on TV, you're saying, I saw the shadows on the wall. And it's like, that's pretty much, you're in Plato's cave. You saw what they wanted you to see. I mean, I see weathermen on the news all the time, kneeling in puddles of water and leaning into the fake wind, claiming they're in a hurricane. And then you see people in the back walking their poodles, eating ice cream, just like it's a normal day. We constantly see media fabricating lies. I mean, propaganda is standard. It's just covert. And what I was pointing out from Mind War, so let me bring this up because we are in a mind war. I was in a conversation today about Michael Aquinos. So the Church of Satan kind of broke off of the idea of worshiping real Satan and became atheistic. And one of their top priests wanted to have a grade system, like first degree, second degree, third degree. And the Church of Satan did not want that. They wanted to prevent any kind of, I guess, way for people to claim to have some kind of authority or something. So they kind of got rid of the whole idea of ranks. But the splinter group, the Temple of Set, established a degree system with initiations and all that stuff. And the Temple of Set was founded by Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquinos, who's known for publishing Mind War, which I have linked here. And so if you're a fifth degree in the Temple of Set, you're called a MAGA, by the way. So he published From PSYOP to Mind War, The Psychology of Victory, Major Michael Aquino, PSYOP Research and Analysis Team Leader. So I have a couple of pull quotes from this. One of them is, you seize control of all the means by which government and populace process information and adjust those so their minds are made up as you desire. The advantage of Mind War is that it conducts wars in a non-lethal, non-injurious, non-destructive way. You overwhelm the enemy with argument. You seize control of all the means by which the government and populace process information to make up their minds. Everyone's happy, no one gets hurt or killed, nothing gets destroyed. Ordinary warfare, on the other hand, is characterized by the lack of reason. The antagonists maim or kill each other's people, steal and destroy, until one side is hurt so badly it gives up, or both sides. With war, there's lasting misery, hate, and suffering. The only loser in a mind war are the war profiteers. Consequently, what Dwight Eisenhower referred to as the military-industrial complex. Now, this is something I was going to bring up. The military-industrial complex has always been a cover for what I would contend has always been the PSYOP entertainment complex. And what's more, he says here, for the mind to believe in its own decisions, it must feel that those were made with no coercion. Coercive measures used by the operative must not be detectable by ordinary means. This is where predictive programming falls into the picture. They convince you of things in advance. I'll put a link to it if you want to read it. But my other point I want to make is that he's describing something as though, hey, this would be a good idea. I'm suggesting that this was already implemented before Mind Wars was ever published. It's almost like a reveal in a way, like Newsbenders. Go through your comments. Immortal L says, unfortunately, if any of the 60s countercultural movements were organic, it was largely co-opted by the CIA. RR says, you don't understand how the media has evolved historically. It was actually more monopolistic before. And even this apparent decentralization, fragmentation of media has not expanded the universe of ideas. That's the main thing, that it has always had an agreement on what the world stage is. And this is global, no media organization calls out fakery. They don't call out the special effects. They don't call out psyops as such. Conspiracy theories always assume that what the mainstream reports happened. They just disagree on who did it or how bad it is. But they never dispute that it happened. RR says, dude, you're too young to know or want to know all the stuff that has exploded to this crazy madness. Well, let's go on a case-to-case basis. Tell me what news story was real. Tell me what event, what mass shooting, tell me what weapon of mass destruction, tell me what out there is a real phenomenon and not some kind of a hyperstition designed to control people's minds. Because I'm saying fake until proven real, disbelief by default is the way to go forward, and that news media was never freer or truthier at any point. The universe of ideas was actually smaller. And as they've fragmented, I mean, you had the fairness doctrine repealed, you had AM radio open up to have more points of view, but they were all still within the establishment paradigm. The closest you could get to Realville was Rush Limbaugh, and Limbaugh may have had some sound reasoning, but it always came with the presupposition that everything on TV is real, that nothing is faked. And this is the big conspiracy. The big conspiracy isn't aliens, reptilians, or Q. The big conspiracy is the wholesale fakery of worldview itself, and that the worldview is the product of a monopoly. The new monotheism. We do have a one world religion. They've just stripped it of the traditional trappings of religion and replaced it with science fiction trappings. What we do know for sure is that there's a consistent implementation of fakery, staging of world stage events, historic events totally fabricated, and that every single fake historic event that we witness is preceded by and attended by entertainment media that reinforces what you're seeing, that inserts narratives that will become the talking points of the day. And it's so consistent, we predict it with regularity. We predict it, and we're able to look at events and then determine, based on the propaganda buildup, who likely was a contributor to this or that psyop. I mean, you look at a 9/11, and it's not just that, oh, look, you can find predictive programming in these movies and these comics. It's like, well, who wrote this stuff? You can find out. And then you find there are consistencies here. Like, case in point, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining has many mentions of Apollo 11. And this has been mainstay of conspiracy discourse for years. But very few connect the rest of it. Like, for example, where it forecasts 9/11. And that's a huge part of it. There's as much 9/11 forecasting and foreshadowing in The Shining as there is Apollo 11 stuff. But what's even more interesting is that the sequel to The Shining, written by Stephen King, Dr. Sleep, has a psychic child, like Danny, who predicts 9/11, who sees it before it happens. Angel Wing says, many fight over stuff they know nothing about, but that's the point, to create division and loosh off our negative energy. You're absolutely right. That is the mind war. That is the info war. And your terminology is perfect here. They fight over stuff they know nothing about. So we're put into a world view that everyone shares, the big picture, but then within it you can have many alternate interpretations, various belief systems, and none of these belief systems are attached to objective reality. They're subjective. So they don't know. They're untestable. They're unfalsifiable models. They're unfalsifiable because they all adhere to the appeal to the authority of the screen. There are no real objectivists. You listen to objectivist philosophy, it sounds like it makes sense, but they channel or they direct all of their perspectives through the television's filter. They assume the media's objective, which it's not. Angel Wing says, that's why he's the neutral. I take no sides. Yeah, I agree with that. However, and I have a graphic that goes along with this. The political horseshoe theory, in my opinion, has been implemented. That it's not just a theory, but it's actually a model. And so the left and the right do, in fact, more or less meet, but not all the way. Like Antifa looks a lot like the Patriot Front or the Proud Boys. Same costumes, they behave the same. Proud Boys versus Soy Boys. But they're not the same. So here I have a map of the world and how people who don't buy into the dream world, the blue pill world stage, are redirected into it. So on the left, you have left-wing wokeism. On the right, you have red pill trutherism. So these would be the fringes. But if you're in the big blue center, you're not agitated at all, you're encouraged to stay there. Everything else looks scary. But if you drift out of this area because you don't believe what's on the big screen anymore, maybe you ask questions, depending on your political predilections, you're either going to go left or right in your search for answers. If you go right, you're going to go into the red pill nightmare version. Everything looks the same, but now you're scared of George Soros, globalists, 5G towers, chemtrails, you can't drink the water, and now you're worried about immigrants. But then, of course, you have the satanic panic built into it as well, the moral panic-demic. So the moral panic-demic and Pizzagate and QAnon are based on traditional concepts of good or evil and sin. The leftist worldview goes progressive. So if you go left, you go into wokeism. This is an equally nightmarish version, but instead of blaming the deep state, you blame the systemic racism. You have a different scapegoat for everything, but it's just as, I would say, nightmarish a scenario. Left and right on the fringes do in fact mirror each other, and both of them are considered to be awake. Red pillars are awake to the matrix. Lefties are woke to fringe. But on the left, they're not too worried about the traditional concepts of sin. They're worried about the more updated version, where you get the injectable Eucharist. And they really worry about the other side, who don't trust the church of media and who, again, are anti the injectable Eucharist. So it's a perfect dialectic, left and right, but these are all existing in the same universe of ideas where they all fear the same things, but they have different approaches to it. What we are positing is that you can't be in the center. You can't be neutral. To be neutral is to accept it, but be unaffected by it. And what I'm suggesting is that the neutral position is actually the most complacent with the propaganda. They're not even trying. I would say our position isn't neutral, but it's actually outside or the off-world stage. And the main difference is this. Whether you're mainstream or alternative media, left and right, you're a passive consumer. You're getting the information top down. It's been pre-vetted for you. The other way of obtaining information is rejecting what is claimed. From a skeptic's perspective, you reject it until you can validate it. And so that's active consumption of media. So we're very proactive. We're not passive receptacles for government propaganda, left or right. And I don't accept anything at screen value because it's a liar and has been this entire time. They didn't just start faking the news gradually. The news was created for, again, worldview conformity. It was never to inform you. It's not like they're trying to do you a favor. Okay, let's continue. Somebody says here, do you understand my boomer generation had these same conversations? Yeah, it may be the case, but something else to point out, because this is a very good time to be involved in this conversation. 10 years ago, this big picture would not have been visible. 10 years ago, the extent of fakery wasn't known. 9/11 Truth never got it right. 9/11 truthers in general are stuck in the political horseshoe. They're on the right side. They're in the nightmare. They're terrified of direct energy weapons and inside jobs and thousands of people dying in these infernos on TV. Like, they bought into the nightmare. And the truth is, we're looking at a psi war, a mind war, and have been this whole time. So the truthers never figured that out, and it wasn't even something you could find out until post 2012 when crisis acting, when simulation drills became something that people started paying attention to. Like, if you talk about the scale of fakery, look how many drills were being conducted, how many mass casualty drills for a terror attack were being performed at Ground Zero on September the 11th. That tells you the scale of the fakery. And my bigger point here is that the information about media fakery wasn't uncovered until more recently. And even more recently is this development that we have largely come to really, I think, pioneer here, is the correlating of predictive programming with future fake news events. RR says, explain 9/11. Sure. Before I do, I would say, if you haven't seen the 1968 play Newsbenders, I highly recommend it. Newsbenders is considered to be satire. The Newsbenders from 30 Minute Theater, and I have the full synopsis. And by the way, the actors here are both interesting. The individual here being interviewed or initiated is or was considered for the voice of Hell 9000, which also came out in 1968. And the other actor, Donald Pleasant, plays the president during World War III in Escape from New York. And he also plays the bad guy in the James Bond series where he has the scar on his right eye. So scar on the right eye, president during World War III, the name Donald. Lots of interesting connections. But the Newsbenders, and I'll put a link here, you have a journalist who has an appointment with an office of the Classified World News Service, the CWNS. They operate between government and media companies supplying footage and stills. So the Classified World News Service is an overarching entity that all media is subject to. And at any time, they can hijack any news station, project any fake news onto the big screen, and everybody believes it. So the media is a good liar, and it's monolithic. It's useful to think of it as monolithic. There's no left calling out right-wing psyops. America is not being called out by Russia for faking the moon landing because Russia fakes all their space stuff as well. There's a unified agreement on the fakery. That's one of the consistencies. But the point here in this is he finds out that they are writing the news 5 years in advance. Let me play this short clip.
I always tell people, news is the most highly developed form of fiction. The most difficult. Come on. I just want to show you something.
Now, he's just going through a room where he's showing him the various events that will be on the news over the next few years. In fact, there's a little moon landing stage.
Both the Pentagon and the Kremlin have announced that the moon has no strategic value.
A comforting note for us to stay at home.
I'll leave you to watch it, but here's the key point, key takeaway. We all agree, and this is observable, that they fake news events. They simulate events, small scale and large scale, consistently. Not everything is fake. That would not be accurate. The media is a good liar. Good liars don't lie with every breath because they would be crazy and you wouldn't believe them. They lie when they have your trust. They lie strategically. When the news media lies, it presents its theatrical, psychological operations, but it presents them after preceding them with copious amounts of predictive programming because they know what they're going to be producing on a timeline, so they prepare us for it. Now, if we can extrapolate from that going back, when do you think it started? It didn't start in 2012. It didn't start in 2001. And if you look at the predictive programming basis for September the 11th, there are indications that that scripted event, that movie, was planned before the towers were built. In fact, there's even a scene in this which foreshadows 9/11. Synchro Morpheus had gone through this with a fine-tooth comb. But the premise here is that they are writing the news 5 years in advance. I'm saying it's more like 50, if not 100, in broad strokes. And then, of course, as they get closer to the goal, they'll have to fine-tune it. But why would they do this? Well, fake news lets you control the present. lets you control the future and the past, and this is being done, quote, globally. So yeah, this is 1968, the year that the Twin Towers construction began. And in this scene, you actually have a visual allusion to the Twin Towers, just kind of randomly built into it. Not a coincidence. Newsbenders sums it up pretty well. So I do have to go. I have an Uber appointment, but we'll continue this conversation tomorrow. I'll start a lot earlier since we have so much to cover. The main things. Elon Musk keeps getting the news. He says he's a 3,000-year-old time-traveling alien who assumes identities. World Stage says, when was the book written that was identical to the Titanic? I think it was like 14 years before. Now, I did have something else. Bezos' Blue Origin deletes a video in space after trolls go full creep on the engineer. So you have the 100th woman in space, and because of misogynistic comments, she's been reduced to tears. And people are apparently mocking or saying lewd things about the noises she made when she looked down at the earth. So and I'm pointing out that this is likely intentional because this is fake, but we also often point out the overjaw effect, how the astronauts often sound like they're experiencing some kind of exaltation. And I have been pointing out for some time that when you get into the underpinnings of the Mystery Babylon cult, which is now dressed up with science fiction, you could make the argument that we are looking at ritual theater here. SpaceX is space sex. I mean, they are like that. I don't know if I should even play it, but I'm just pointing out that a lot of people have noticed, and I'm saying this is some kind of a psyop because this is intentional. They always do this. I mean, did you hear William Shatner when he reached the Kármán line? It just, I don't know. It sounds a little overblown, and they do it on purpose. RR says, I enjoy listening. Well, thanks for joining. I mean, I'm not telling anybody what to believe, but what I'm pointing out is that media is not what we've been told. It's been hijacked for an entirely ulterior motive, and it's global. It's monolithic. And what we have discerned here is that for big events like 9/11, you have decades of psychological conditioning for it. And it goes down into the minutia, into minute details. It's rather remarkable. And one of for example, the Millennium Hilton, built like the monolith at ground zero, and many allusions to 9/11 in Kubrick's work. Not just The Shining, but 2001: A Space Odyssey. So what chartword.com suggests here is that they were, quote, subconsciously programming us all with the idea that 9/11/2001 would be a mass media ritual executed on a movie screen, on television, and our collective subconscious. And if you look at the mechanics behind propaganda and advertising, what you're really looking at is just repetition of messaging. They have to show you a commercial so many times before you just accept it as inevitable. You make the decision, but you're being coerced. And that's what Michael Aquinos' book Mind War was talking about, that we've been collectively coerced into a worldview created for us by the worldview monopolists. And worldview is essentially synonymous with religion in this context. So good news, bad news. Bad news, we have a one world religion. Good news, it's already here. We're living in it. And it didn't just start recently, but no, media has always been subverted for the sole purpose of putting man into our simulation. And we are in a simulation, not physically, but mentally. Our internal map, the consensus version of events, and our shared history, which is provably chock full of fakery, that is a simulation. It's like if your world is defined by liars and full of misconceptions and superstitions, if you're a delusionist, you could say that you live in a simulation and that your model doesn't comport with reality. And we all have our internal sim, our internal mental model. But It's meant to align with what we experience on the outside. And for the most part, it does. Even the fake one they give us, because we don't directly experience those areas where it diverges. That's where you have crisis actors and psyops fill in the blanks. So if you trust the screen and you treat it like it's a sensory apparatus, you're going to absorb a lot of fake stuff into your worldview unnecessarily. And I'm taking the position of the informed non-believer. And being informed about what we don't believe in is a better position than having low information and believing because you trust, especially because we can point out the myriad of ways in which they have betrayed your trust, if they ever had earned it in the first place. Lord Laney says, probably goes back to the beginning, ancient Sumerian news bending, then Egyptians carved their news bending and hieroglyphics, now we get CNN. Yeah, I think there's a continuity of control and agenda, and you know what? It's very much consistent in the predictive, in the symbolism, the pyramid, the capstone, the tower stuff, all this symbolism we point out, it harkens back to something ancient, but now it's dressed up with, well, science fiction. Michelle says, I know you need to go, but tomorrow can we talk about the destruction of the Guidestones? Yeah, actually, we should really quick. That'd be a good topic. Georgia Guidestones were destroyed on 7/6/2022, 42 years after they appeared on 322, which is the Skull and Bones Society's number. And then they were cherry bombed. I mean, these things are supposed to survive the apocalypse and warn future mankind so we don't screw up again. And some guy blew them up with a cherry bomb. But interestingly, that was George Bush's birthday. So 7/6/22, 42 years after the most famous Skull and Bones men, again, Skull and Bones, chapter 322, they appear on 322. On his birthday, they blow up, and he turned 76. So you got 7/6, 7/6, kind of a 42 thing there. And I know there's something with the weight of those things. The weight of the Georgia Guidestones. I think they were each 42,000 pounds, each of the pieces. And they blew up the capstone. And from the top, from a bird's eye view, the Georgia Guidestones looked like a skull and crossbones. And this is highly significant. Now, they don't exist anymore. This is highly significant because the Skull and Bones Society. And then you have, of course, the skull and bones encoded into the design. You can see it from the top view. And there was this image a few years ago where it appeared to be blood on the top of it. And there were rumors that Google Earth picked up blood on top of the Georgia Guidestones and there had been some kind of a human sacrifice, which it's probably part of the story, but I think there might be a deeper connection here, especially with regard, here it is, with regard to the Skull and Bones and their alleged involvement in the JFK psyop. This is all just part of the narrative here, but look, this is the Georgia Guidestones from above, and right there on the right side. And this is, again, the capstone of the stones. And I think they were 42,000 pounds each. It's all esoteric. I think the entire combined weight was 237,000 pounds, which I think comports with the moon landing thing, you know, the 237,000 miles. There's quite a lot. I'll bring up my old blogs and we'll talk about it tomorrow. But highly significant, ritualistic event. The fact they tore it down on George W.'s birthday, very interesting. And the number 42 and 33 are two of the most common numbers. I have consistently noted 42 stands in for Saturn and the concept of falling and matter, whereas 33 is consistently associated with the sun, light, and ascension. So it's this light-dark polarity. The checkerboard, the Masonic pillars reflect this, the Hegelian dialectics through which they manipulate the masses. These two numbers are prevalent, highly consistent, and I'll put it in my notes here. We'll talk about that. I'm not into numerology, but apparently they are. Like J.P. Morgan said, millionaires don't do astrology, billionaires do. There's something up with this, which is why we study it. Anyway, thanks for your comments, and we'll continue this tomorrow. Subscribe for the newsletter and the archives.
Creeper beat, man. Come on. You know it. You're playing different things, man. The play society.
Infinite plane, infinite plane, infinite plane, infinite plane. Doing my thing, do my thing, do my thing, do my thing. Infinite plane, yeah. I live on an infinite plane. I live on an infinite plane. They telling me different things. That's supposed to be pulling the strings, but I know they playing the games. Since I found out today, I live on an infinite plane. I ain't playing no games. I'm on a different plane. I live on an infinite plane. Yeah. No, the news is fake. They're trying to choose my fate. I know the views is fake. They pushing the global stage. Fake news on the radio wave. All the hoax, the whole world is a stage. Body double like I'm Saddam Hussein. Doing my thing. Don't want the fame, just trying to make change. They took out my page. But an infinite gang, infinite plane, playing no games. Infinite gang, we ain't playing no games. Infinite plane, I'm on an infinite plane. Infinite plane, the world that I live in is strange.